her own brain. I need a woman, can't look at each face. I step up closer to the edge of her waist. Palm sweat, can't wait. She leans into me. Oh yeah, I grant her a dream.
Welcome to Sobriety, Spirituality, and Sales, brought to you by Michael Bader, State Farm Agency, First and River. Shay, are we at episode 38? Episode 38 today. If you're watching the show, if you've watched the show in the past, life, and you want to find out who you really are on the other side of that, please reach out to me. My website's running below. I think we're going to have an incredible show today. We've got a guest, Ian Koniak, on the show. Ian, am I pronouncing your last name correctly?
You are? Yeah,
Okay.
You got it.
Welcome to the show. We were put together by Mike Abramowitz, a buddy of yours, who I respect a lot. He has been in the Cutco game for a long time, and now he's partnering with Sam Taggart and door-to-door experts and helping us grow that business, helping Sam grow his business, excuse me. And I'm so thrilled to have you on the show. I read your bio, incredible sales career, and now you help other salespeople to up their game. And I'm just excited to hear, your life's journey and where it's taken you and where you're at now and what gets you going. So welcome.
Yeah, I know Sam Taggart well. We were in a mastermind together in 2017. And
Okay.
I actually spoke at D2D Con
Oh, did you?
and spoke on sales. Yeah, this was in 2020 alongside Ed Milet, and that was the last time I saw Sam. It was actually right before I got sober, believe it or not.
Hey.
So that was that's funny that you bring that up. It was like literally kind of at a rock bottom when I was at that conference, and I was in a tough spot with my wife, and I thought it was her problem. I thought everything else was, was wrong except me. And then I had my rock bottom a month after D2D Con, or maybe it was a couple weeks after, and then my whole life changed. So a little bit about me, I guess my passion is my family. First and foremost, I'm a father of two boys and a husband, 13 years, about to celebrate my 13-year anniversary. I'm the founder and CEO of a sales coaching company called Untap Your Sales Potential. We are the world's fastest growing sales coaching company, made the Inc. 5000 now, second year in a row. And I spent 20 years before that in tech sales, and now teach others how to not just sell at a higher level, but do it without sacrificing their health, their relationships, their family. So we teach mindset, habits, and skills as a very holistic approach, combining personal development and strategic selling. So it's a unique approach to the whole person versus just teaching them the skills that they need.
I love that. We're running your website below if anybody wants to reach out to you if they're curious about your approach and how that works. We've got your website running there. And so how did you get into sales to begin with? Did you have a family member in sales? Was it like accidentally? Like myself, I got approached by some folks that said, "Hey, do you want to sell door to door this summer? You can make enough money to pay for your college next year." And it was like, Mike going. So I was like, I guess I'm going. It wasn't like, it wasn't an option really. So how did you get into sales?
I was a teacher in Venezuela. After college, I went and lived there and taught English for a year. And I fell in love with a woman there who happened to be my student. It was an adult Spanish class.
Okay.
And I was 22 years old at the time, and my visa ran out, and I came back to the US with no money, no girlfriend, and no job. And I wanted to stay in that relationship. And there was going to be two paths to staying. One, go back to Venezuela, or two, bring her here. But I had no money. And in order to bring her here, I'd have to put her through college and get her a student visa and fly her here and support both of us as a 22-year-old. So I had initially wanted to be a photojournalist. I did a lot of photography and travel when I was in Venezuela. I loved that. And then I found out that didn't pay the bills. It was mostly freelance. It would be a year's journey. And I really did want to be with my girlfriend. So I was looking at jobs and trying to think about how can I make as much money as possible and get her here. And I went to a sales and marketing career fair near my house, and I basically saw a little flyer, and it said first year $50,000, second year 75, third year 100 plus, 100K plus. In the bottom it said guaranteed income.
Wow.
Guaranteed. What do I have to do? He
Yeah.
said, you just need to do exactly what we tell you, and we can guarantee you'll have that income. And I said, well, what's the job? And they said, sales. You're going to sell copiers door to door. So I was doing businesses. I ended up getting the job, and um, the rest is history. Within 1 year, I had made what they promised. I had my girlfriend here. I had paid for her college tuition, and that was kind of my entry. And I ended up being 10 years in that industry, selling, printing equipment, copying equipment. And then I transferred over to software and tech, and got into Salesforce. So that was my journey and how I got in originally.
Incredible. And so to make that 100 grand or whatever that was guaranteed, and look, I mean, if it's a commission job, there's really no guarantee, but they're saying if you work your butt off and you do what we tell you to do, you'll make the money, right? Um,
They said, I said, what do you have to do? They said, it's really simple. Every single day, do 2 and set 2. Do 2 appointments every day and set 2 appointments. If you do that, you're going to have 10 appointments a week. Even if you suck, if you have 10 appointments a week, 4 of them will be qualified opportunities, and you'll close 1 in 4. And based on the commission of average deal price is $10,000, average sale, that's $40,000, right? If you sell 1 deal a week, that's 40,000 a month revenue. That's 4,000 a month commission, right? And per year, that's, your 48,000 your first year, plus your base salary. I think it was 22K. They paid us a small base. So that was the guarantee. And it was legitimate, but to actually set 2 and do 2 every single day, in a completely outbound, cold calling environment. And they put me in Koreatown where, I didn't speak the language. There was no, very few existing customers. So that was a very demanding to prospect, and to always do meetings and to always advance deals at the same time requires a certain type of person who's going to be disciplined and consistent. But I had no other option. If I wanted to be with my girlfriend, I had to do that. And I just remember them saying, like, do 2, set 2, do 2, set 2. Well, for you to set 2 appointments every day, you need to do a lot of cold calling, a lot of door knocking. And that was always my visualization that I did was, every time I knocked a door, I just kind of imagine my boss giving me $10. And
love,
where does the $10 come from? He said, well, you got to knock 100 doors a week to
right.
get the 10 appointments. You got to have the 10 appointments to get the 1 sale. The sale's worth $1,000. So again, 1,000 divided by 100 is $10. So don't think of it as, each door knock is a sale. Think of it as each door knock is $10. And the numbers worked out. And I ended up running a $60 million company. I ran Southern California. I had 70 sellers. I had 10 sales managers by the time I left. So I spent 10 years in that company and had 10 promotions in 10 years and was their number 1 global director of sales before I got into Salesforce. So I taught that same methodology to a lot of people, and it's true. It's like it's just the science of selling. And if you put in the work, and you do it from a place of integrity and from service and trying to help people, sales is a pretty cool career option in that sense, where you have unlimited earning potential.
100%. Two things strike me with what you just said. I most recently, before this job with Door to Door Experts, I was working at a car dealership and I was selling Ford vehicles. And I was a top salesperson, top 5 out of 130 salespeople. But
Mhm.
the top guy was a guy from Mexico that he'd been here for a long time, but he barely spoke English, right? Or it was super choppy, broken English. But man, he brought the energy. His people loved him. It's like, he just had this huge smile on his face like you do. And it's like, th- you can't really teach that, right? It's like if you're a can-do type of person, if you have a great attitude, if you bring energy to every door you go to, every person that you meet, I mean, you're going to have some success, as you work through the growing pains of maybe learning the product. whatever else, bridges you cross.
Yeah, there's some intangibles that you can't teach. Can't teach drive. Can't teach caring, like really genuinely caring about other people who you're talking to. Um, you can't teach charisma. You got to be likable. Um, those are intangibles. If you don't have the caring, if you don't have the drive, and if you don't have the ability to connect with people, you can do all the activity in the world, but you're not going to get the results.
100%. And I love the fact that you said, in so many words, control the controllables. Do what you need to do to hit those numbers on a weekly basis. Don't focus on the sale. Focus on the controllables, which is 100 doors a week or whatever that marker was. Selling books,
Mhm.
and for me, it was like, okay, 30 demos a day will get me 3 sales a day, will get me to wherever I want to be. And we would break that down into 6 goal periods throughout the day. And so, just like my sobriety, this actually helped me in my sobriety and helped me to understand this 24 hours at a time, a phrase that gets thrown a lot around in recovery a lot, because it's so true. Like, all we have is today, right? Like, I could wrap my head around that, because it was like I knew goal periods were so important. If I focus on the big picture, I have less likely to succeed. If I focus on what I can control right now in this moment, in this day, in this 6-hour period, goal period, whatever that is, it becomes a lot easier to manage.
Yeah, I think what's his name, Scott Leese. Um, Scott Leese. I have to look it up, but he wrote a book on how sales and recovery, what they have in common. Um, and it was addicted to the process. Addicted to the process is what it's called,
Interesting.
and it's really good. It's like how the 12 steps applies to a successful sales career. And he broke it down and put the whole parallels together. I think it was unique. I haven't seen a lot of books written about the direct process of getting sober as compared to the process of getting successful in a sales career and vice versa. That was
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Absolutely. And you know what parallels too is that high you get from selling something is that natural high that replaces that substance high or whatever you're using, right? I mean, to me, selling something was such a just a rush. And then the best time to
Mhm.
sell something is right after you sell something, because you're already in such a great mood and stuff. So I'm sure you can relate to that as well. But the sobriety and the spirituality piece, we've touched on your sales career a bit, and I'm sure we'll get into some more of your training methodology and what makes you unique. And you've had an incredible career over really 2 big fields, copiers and then the SaaS sales. But what does your sobriety path look like today? If you want to share a little bit about what maybe struggles that you've had over the years, how you came to walk a spiritual path, things of that nature, whatever you'd like to share.
Yeah, I think I was always like a pretty high charging, fast flying kind of seller, and um, I come from a family of addicts. My alcoholism has been in my family, and sex addiction has been in my family. I had early, early, very early exposure to pornography as a young child, and um, that's what my sobriety is. I've been sober from porn for 6 years, and that's very common, and it's often a substitute in the SAA groups. We see a lot of the AA folks that come in because they turn to other addictive behaviors when they drop alcohol, but it's all coming from the same place. So my background was I had, I would say, alcoholic tendencies pretty early on. I partied a lot throughout high school and college, and certainly my 20s in sales. And I ended up crashing my car into a tree, piss drunk, um, and I was going 60 miles an hour. And that somehow my body was limber enough where I walked away unscathed. And I got away with it. I didn't get a DUI. Cops pulled us over walking home, but they hadn't gotten in the car yet, so they didn't connect me to the accident because they didn't have the car info, and they pulled us over and they asked us about the crash, and we said, we don't know what you're talking about, officer. We're just walking home. And I go back the next day, and my car was gone. It had been impounded for a hit and run against the tree, which was public property. Got my car, told the lawyer I'd fallen asleep, and that was kind of my scared sober, if you want to call it that. And after that, I just stopped getting really wasted. But I didn't stop going to strip clubs. I didn't stop looking at porn. The woman that I brought from Venezuela, after supporting her, putting through college, she ended up having an affair on me. We were living together, and broke my heart. It was a painful time, and I kind of acted out after that, and was really just went down this road of like trying to sleep with as many women as possible, and I kind of just, I would say, I objectified women. And that's the locker room culture. And it's a part of the sales culture too. I remember going on these President's Club trips, and you'd have these married men kind of, doing shady shit, getting hookers and whatnot. And that was common. And I, unfortunately, was part of that for that period of time in my 20s when I was single. After I broke up with this girl, I kind of went on this multi-year binge, if you want to call it that culminated in me crashing my car. And then I'm like, maybe I have a problem here. So I just stopped getting drunk. Really, it's what happened. And I stopped drinking and driving, but I didn't stop. And I stopped using drugs, but I didn't get into recovery. I hadn't really, hit my bottom yet. It was just more of a scare that made me realize I could die if I did that again. So throughout like my 20s and 30s, I was what you would call a high functioning addict. I would be someone, I was achieving a lot, but then I would have these periods where I was really stressed, and I tended to go hard, and then I would, end up either doing risky things or doing things that were out of integrity with my values. And so it wasn't like I was a day-to-day, I wasn't one of these people that couldn't just have one. It was more of like, it was a celebratory thing, or it was dealing with stress. I would turn to addictive behaviors. And so that continued I got married in 2010 to my wife, and that kind of continued, but I kept it on the DL because my wife is, she's conservative, she's Christian. I didn't want her to experience any of that stuff. So I kind of kept that hidden. And so I'm married, and I'm, the successful business leader. And here I am with this dark side, right? Where I would go traveling, and I'd go to strip clubs, or I would go get drunk. I wouldn't drive, but I'd still have these benders occasionally, like once a quarter. Didn't think twice of it. Didn't think it was that big of a deal. But what happened was in 2020, or 2019, actually, right around when I spoke at D2D-Con, is interesting. I just had my first son. He was 2 or 3 years old. And it was getting worse. It was like these incidences were getting worse. And it was like, it wasn't a quarter, it was like a monthly thing where I just go on these benders. And in 2019, I decided to become a coach. This is 7 years ago. And I started helping people. At the time, I was like the top Salesforce guy. I'd sold, number one globally. And I'm like, I got to start giving back. Got to start like helping people. I had a spiritual experience that led me to want to start coaching. I got stuck on a roller coaster at the end of 2018, upside down for 30 minutes.
Holy cow. Where was this?
30 minutes. This was at Six Flags in Valencia, Six Flags Magic Mountain. And it was on one of these flying coasters that's, where the track is above you. So you're hanging. So I'm hanging on this bar. We have video footage. If you YouTube me and roller coaster, you'll see the footage, because people were filming, because we were stuck up there for 30 minutes. And that was when like I had my come to Jesus. like I was so scared. I thought I was going to die. I kind of reflected on my life. And I'll get to sobriety and spirituality in a second, but um, I was up there and I just had this realization that my whole life had been self-serving. I'd been all about the money. Been about success. And what God told me in that moment was like, you need to start helping people. Or what I heard, the voice is, Ian, if you died right now, because I thought I was going to die. I thought this thing was going to fall. I was hanging 180 feet in the air. I was scared for my life. And they say, like, people who think they're going to die, like, whatever happens in your brain, well, that was going on with me, where my life flashed. I saw my kids. I'm like, if I die now, my life will have been wasted. The talents that God gave me will have been wasted. It was all self-serving. This is not the meaning of life. Life is about giving back and helping people. And I said at that moment, God, get me down from this coaster. I will start helping people. I don't know what that looks like, but just get me down. And then nothing happened. And then I prayed more. I said, I'll start right now, God. I'll start now. And then the coaster took off right when I said, I'll start now. So that was my spiritual awakening, where I said, I need to dedicate my life to serving others. And I've been doing that. Well, that began in 2019, where I started doing this coaching thing. Yet I had these dark side where I'm going out, I'm going to strip clubs, I'm partying, I'm hiding it from my wife. And there was this realization that I couldn't have this two lives at the same time, because here I am coaching others and teaching mindset and teaching, habits and representing something that I wasn't fully living. That's really the best way to put it. And I realized I couldn't go on this way if I was going to dedicate my life to helping others. I needed to help myself first. And so I'll keep it really short. I confessed to my wife and I told her that I had been watching porn. I had been going on webcams where there were live women, and that was my rock bottom. She did not take it well. I won't get into all the details, but she was pregnant, and we thought she was going to miscarry, and she was, she was having contractions, and she was 4 months pregnant. So I thought that she was going to have a miscarriage. But when we got to the doctor, we found out the baby was okay. It wasn't labor contractions. It was stress contractions. And apparently the doctor said this is very common, where pregnant women come in with the belief that they're having an early labor miscarriage, but in reality, it was their husbands who came out with secrets or lies. And this is extremely common, where people keep this pornography, sex, whatever secrets, and it comes out, and it's so upsetting to the partner that they almost lose the baby. He regularly sees this. So that was during that time on the way over to the hospital. I didn't know what was going on. I thought we were going to lose the baby. And that's when I got sober. I mean, that was when I prayed to God again and said, God, help me, help me. Within that week, I was in a meeting in SAA, 12-step recovery program for sex addiction. And that was the vice that I started with, was pornography, strip clubs, anything related. And I quit all of it. And that, I think, is very normalized in society. People think it's okay. It's not. It's not okay to cheat on your wife and hide things that are sexual in nature. I don't care who you are. Unless they're on the up and they know exactly what you're doing, it's infidelity. And that is what I didn't realize, is that keeping secrets and hiding that stuff, I thought was just what guys do. But if I had known how my wife would have seen that, then I never would have done that. And I deal with this every day with my coaching. So many men have these secrets that they don't tell their partners about, and they feel shame around. So that was my sobriety. It was from porn. And then I went through a 12-step recovery program. I got a sponsor. And shortly thereafter, I quit all at once: weed, alcohol, and Adderall, which were all addictive behaviors. So I got sober from 5 areas. I didn't quit alcohol entirely. I still have a glass of wine or two, because I'm not the guy who can just have one and then go crazy. That's not me. So I'll have a glass of wine with my wife, but I haven't gotten drunk in 6 years.
Wow.
I have not smoked weed in that time. I have not taken Adderall. I flushed the Adderall. So I cut everything off. So my entire existence is based on feeling what I feel and dealing with the emotions, and not going to some other substance, because I've cut off everything. I mean, apart from like I guess some social media and some YouTube videos, which everyone's got to have their vices, but I don't have any substance or process that I turn to that's addictive in nature. I cut all of that out when I got sober from porn. I got sober from everything else too.
Wow, that's an incredible story. I relate quite a bit to what you're saying, and you mentioned this early in the show about um, you didn't mention the word escape, but that's what came to my mind is it's an escaping
Yeah,
reality. What it is, you're
right.
just one substance for the other for whether it's porn, social media, alcohol, drugs. For me later in my addiction, it was like, what can I use to like totally numb me out to where I'm not feeling a single thing because I just want to. That's all I want at this point.
That's exactly right. Because people think sober, they think booze, you don't drink or use drugs, but it's not. It's a mental state of inability to cope and deal with the feelings you're dealing with. And it could be shopping, it could be gambling, it could be news consumption, it could be phone. I mean, it's addiction. I think most people or many people are addicted by nature. And just because they don't have a needle in their arm doesn't mean they're not, you know, that they're not addicts. And so I think
Well, correct me if
I
I'm
think you're
wrong.
right.
With your coaching business, correct me if I'm wrong, but do you have guys that want to rationalize and justify, well, I'm not like the guy with the needle in my arm, but yet they're still having 5 or 6 drinks a night, or they're having that 2 Adderall a day to keep their numbers up, or whatever that is? I think that keeps people sick when they can't see the similarities. All they see is the differences.
If someone's drinking 5 or 6 drinks a night and they were coaching with me, I would tell them to get into treatment immediately. That is alcoholic. That's an alcoholic. You don't drink 5 or 6 a night in a normal as a normal adult functioning. If they were having 2 pills a day and they needed that, it's addictive. Like it's not. It's the reliance on substance to be able to cope is addiction in my definition. If they're doing the zins and they need that, like it really comes down to I teach something called the integrity gap, which is um, it's a drawing. You can look it up, but the integrity gap is the distance between your identity, right? We have 2 lines. This is your identity. This is how you see yourself, your values, the way you see yourself. And then this line here is your actions and your behavior. So I'll put this little. So the distance here between these 2 lines, between your values and your identity and your actions and behaviors, that is what I call the integrity gap. And the size of the integrity gap will determine the shame that you feel and carry around. And so I'll just ask them straight up, how do you see yourself? What are your values? Okay, what are you doing that's not aligned with your values? And then this stuff comes out. And the goal is to eliminate shame. The goal is to feel proud of who they become. So if you're not like wanting to change, if you're like, I'm cool, I love my Adderall, it keeps me going, like there's no integrity gap because you don't see it as a problem. It's only where the shame lives and where you're hiding things and where secrecy lives and where you feel bad about the thing you're doing. That is where the actual problem lies. You follow me? So someone is, I love my 6 beers and I'm good. Like there's, what's the issue? You want to live your life, live your life. Go do you, fuck up your liver, die young. That's your choice. But
Right.
there's no integrity gap.
100%. No, that makes perfect sense. And I think that was what was happening for me is, I grew up with certain morals or values and all those went out the window as soon as I started becoming more of an addict and an alcoholic because I compromised those on a minute by minute basis, right?
That's right. You're
So,
compromising your values.
yeah.
So if your values is honesty and you're keeping secrets, there's an integrity gap. If your value is health, but you're overeating, there's an integrity gap. If your value is, clarity or focus, and then you're hungover, like that to me, that's where if you got nothing, they say we're only as sick as our secrets, right? And if you got no secrets, right, you're in a good spot. And if you got no shame, you're in a good spot. I have not found that to be the case with most people. I think most people have their secrets. I was coaching a guy yesterday who just quit tobacco. Um, and we were talking about shame. And I said, are there anything else that you're ashamed of? And he's like, well, I'm watching pornography. And I'm like, well, tell me more about why do you feel ashamed of it? And he's like, well, I'm hiding it from my wife. I'm like, do you feel ashamed of the act? He's like, well, kind of. I feel like after I do it, I feel like it's not a healthy way to cope. I have less energy. I feel like I turn to that because it's like a coping mechanism, and I want to be a strong person that doesn't rely on that. I said, okay, well, there's an integrity gap there. So I gave him some coaching on what he can do. I would not consider him a sex addict or a porn addict. I think it's more about, this is something in my life that's still persisting, that I'm not proud of and that I keep secret, and therefore I want to work on it. Like, that's kind of the difference between addiction as it's defined and kind of viewed in society versus shame and maybe secrecy around things that we're doing in the shadows and shadow type of behaviors. So I think it's all about how you feel about the things you're doing. That's a good place to start. And I know for me, I had a lot of shame and I had a lot of secrecy around hiding of what I was viewing and hiding activities like going to strip clubs. I knew my wife was not cool with that. I knew she um, wouldn't be, because she told me when we got married, the one thing she asked of me in my bachelor party is, please don't go to a strip club. And she told me, Ian, I consider that to be cheating. I said, it's not cheating. I'm not like, having sex or kissing another woman. She's like, you're looking at naked women. They're grinding on you. Like, how is that not cheating? And we just didn't see eye to eye on it because I didn't know what it meant to be married. And we get to spirituality. Now I'm a Christian. I was baptized a year and a half ago, but the way the Bible views marriage is very different than how I had viewed marriage. And what the Bible says is you become one flesh with your partner when you get married. One flesh, meaning their needs are your needs. So if she feels a certain way, I feel that way too. So even if I don't necessarily understand it, or maybe see eye to eye, if she sees that as cheating, I'm cheating. So at the time, I wasn't spiritually mature. I didn't have any knowledge of anything biblical, that's for sure. And so I just said, well, she's wrong, I'm right, I'll just do it in secret and not tell her about it. Well, what do you think that creates in a marriage, right? Where there's secrecy. That creates distrust, lack of communication, and ultimately going down a road where you're not one with your partner. So
Yeah.
I think, again, I get back to that. The issue is, if you're hiding shit, if you feel shame around it, if you're doing things that conflict with your values, that's when those are prime candidates to start to work on and to bring a light to the shadow type of behaviors and activities.
Well, let's pick that up here in a second. We're going to take a quick break from our sponsor, and we'll be right back.
What matters most to you? Protecting your family, your home, your car, or planning for the future? State Farm makes it simple to protect what matters most. Agent Michael J. Bader is here in your community to guide you through every step, making sure you get the protection you need without the hassle. Whether it's auto, home, life, or business insurance, Michael J. Bader can help you find the right plan today. Call 520-878-0098 or email michael@baderagency.com. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to Sobriety, Spirituality, and Sales, part 2 here of our episode with Ian Koniak. If you're just joining us, we are talking about all things addiction, all things sobriety, recovery, spirituality, love the roller coaster story, and then sales, business, and where we left off there. What I hear you saying, and this was my personal experience too, is it's like, it's not a problem until you recognize that there is a gap, to your words, in what I'm actually doing and what I either want to be doing, or what was taught to me as a kid, or what I inherently in my heart feel like is either right or wrong. And then
It's that moral compass. Yeah.
and it creates a big ball of wax, because then you just internally, you are so divided and you're just going against yourself, right? I mean, it just creates more chaos.
You nailed it.
Yeah. So, first and foremost, I just want to commend you for coming on and sharing and being this vulnerable. And I think pornography does not get talked about enough. It is so rampant. It affects so many men. It lowers testosterone. It hurts relationships with husbands and wives, relationships with children. Your sex life becomes this just ridiculousness of like you can't be satisfied because all you're doing is watching stuff that is so unreal. They're making it look real, but it's so unreal. And I have struggled over the years. And when I was deep in my addiction, I would turn to pornography quite often. And, you know, there was times where I'd even think, man, I think I have some kind of sex demon inside me or some craziness where it's like I had a one-track mind and that's all I could think about. And every woman that I looked at, it was like in a sexual manner. And I did not, that was an integrity gap at that time because I did not like that about myself. And I thought, who
Mhm.
is this person? How did I get to this point? Right. And for me, I mean, I was using methamphetamines and that really ramped up that lifestyle,
Yeah,
that behavior as
yeah,
well.
yeah. I think it's every man's battle. In fact, there's a book called Every Man's Battle that talks about it because we're um, inherently sexual creatures. And if you are married, again, there's not judgment against whether porn is right or wrong. It's not judgment about what you do in your own personal life. It's judgment about how you feel. You even said it. I had some kind of sex demon, and I wasn't. I was looking at every woman like a piece of meat. Like that. That's not respecting and glorifying the feminine in any way, shape, and form. And so for me, by not viewing that and by not polluting my mind with images of naked women or sexual imagery, naturally that sexual energy has to go somewhere, right? So it's either channeled into creativity or life force or maybe exercise or control versus compulsive release of that energy because I don't know what to do with it, right? So that's what pornography and masturbation does. It's like this compulsive, I just got to do something with this. Well, if you don't have that as an outlet, what do you do with that energy, right? And there's this whole semen retention movement, no fat movement that people are getting on because they realize the power in not having you know that dependency and what it can do with creativity and with confidence and keeping that testosterone in you, right? So for me, that wasn't the reason. It was more of a moral reason for me to be faithful to my wife when I knew how she felt about it. And so what's happened with my relationship, and I think it's probably common to most men is I've been married for 16 years, and by not viewing porn and not looking at other women, I naturally have a much greater attraction to my wife,
Mm,
much greater,
wow.
because I'm not looking at other women that don't look like her, or she's 45, I'm 47. I'm not looking at some 25-year-old porn stars. So what do you think that does when I see my wife? It's I want to jump her.
Right.
And that's how it should be. So the level of connection it's brought when I only have that channeled in the place that as a married man I believe it's directed or meant to go. It's made my relationship with my wife extremely close, and when I want to do something and she doesn't want to, I have to deal with it. And I'm not going to be this needy little boy who goes off and does his thing just to satiate a need. I have to actually talk about it or communicate my needs or just go to sleep, or you know what I mean? You're not a slave to this thing, this energy that is, like you said, it's very powerful, and it leads to people fantasizing. It leads to people cheating. It leads to double life. I cannot tell you how many married men I know that do not have sex with their wives, that aren't intimate with their wives because they just can get their needs met with porn. And I think it's a real shame in a relationship when that happens. Personally,
One thing worth mentioning too is with the amount of sex trafficking that's going on today, I think the porn industry is actually heavily contributing to that as well. People that are watching pornography, and then not only do you start watching pornography, you start watching whatever you're watching that is the fluff stuff doesn't become enough, and then you start watching other stuff. It's like nobody smokes crack right away. They start with weed and then they go to the heavier drugs. I feel like it's the same with pornography.
it is, and I'll just add one thing to that. Like, it's easy to turn the other way and say, well, I'm not watching child trafficking videos. I'm not watching rape videos. Of course you're not. You're not sick. You're not twisted. But by watching Pornhub and by going to these sites, you are directly contributing to that activity.
Mm,
Directly, not indirectly, directly. How so? because you're supporting that site where that trafficking is hosted and harbored. And if you don't believe me on this, there's a huge movement. It's called Trafficking Hub. And there's a book on this called The Takedown. And Lila Mickelwatt wrote the book. She was recently on with Theo Vaughn as a guest on his podcast. And I read her book, and it's really eye-opening. But they were doing a lot of investigations into missing children, into trafficking, and people that were missing, and they kept showing up on these porn sites. And when they tried to find it, the porn sites shut down the investigation. They hid it. They would not take down the videos. And these were kids as young as 4 years old being raped and kidnapped online, and Pornhub would not take it down. Once I read that, I couldn't go back. It was like I had prayed to God. I said, God, help me hate porn. I don't want to watch this stuff. Help me. And once I read that book, I'm like, I hate this evil, sick, demonic industry. And if you go on that, knowing that, it's easy to look the other way. But if you read that book, and if you actually do a little tiny bit of research into where these victims end up and where the trafficking, it all points to porn. And I feel very passionate about this because for me, it took reading that and learning about that to really not want to be supportive of this. And that's no judgment against your impulse or desire or sexual, preference, whatever your own activities. It's about supporting sites that intentionally keep up content of underage children or trafficking victims and make it almost impossible to get that taken down, and then repurposing and reposting these traumas over and over again. I mean, there are people that were drugged. There's a whole section on Pornhub, and this is all documented, of passed out victims that were being filmed, child victims, and all of it's documented in this book. And it's all, the guy ended up dying, his house burned down. It reads like an FBI detective novel, but I would tell as many people to read that book as possible, The Takedown, because once you've read that, your conscience is going to feel differently about going to Pornhub, and it's all the same companies that own all these sites. That for me changed everything. Ironically, that book arrived in the mail. I didn't ask for it. It just arrived like from an angel in the mail. And to me,
ironic. I mean, that's you couldn't put it in any better words.
I'm going to put this, you can send it to the show notes if you have it, but I made a video on this, and you're nailing it. You really are, Mike. You're nailing this. And I made a video a year ago or 2 years ago, and it's called The Dangers of Porn for Men. And I talked about the addictive nature of it and how it escalates. I talked about the trafficking. I talked about what it does to a relationship, to testosterone.
Yeah.
And I think not enough people talk about it.
Put that in an email so I can put it in the description for sure. Yeah.
I'll send it to you right after for sure.
Okay, so let's switch gears for a second here. So men that you work with that may have an addiction issue, whether that's pornography, alcohol, or whatever, that, part of the premise of the show, Sobriety, Spirituality, and Sales, was people would always say, Mike, you have a lot of talent, you have potential. And as well as I do, when someone says you have potential, it means you're not living up to your potential, right? And so for me, getting sober, developing that foundation of recovery, developing a spiritual foundation, getting those values and morals back, getting to determine, hey, what are my core values? What's really important to me? And aligning with those and showing up every day for myself and my clients gave me the consistency in business that I had been searching for my whole life. I became so solid as a salesperson. I showed up every single day the same way when other guys were still hungover, when other guys were not at the top of their game because of for whatever reasons. So I don't know if that's part of how you holistically coach your guys, but it sounds like that's what you do.
Yeah, it is. So the approach, my experience was your experience. Once I got sober, then it was very easy to show up consistently. It was very easy to do the hard work that selling requires. I left Salesforce in 2021. I got sober in 2020. 2020 was about saving my marriage, being honest, getting sober, going through the 12 steps. That was the most transformational year of my life. And it positioned me to be able to run a business and start a business and believe in myself, because I had nothing left to hide, and I had discipline and habits, and I'd say the values that I was living. And then I'm like, well, I need to help people. And where I was before starting coaching and having that double life, once I address that, then I could bring that into my coaching program. So my coaching program starts with mindset. Then it goes to habits, then it goes to skills. We don't get into the skills until we have the right mindset, which is really about your values, your purpose, what you stand for, your vision. Habits about where you spend your time. Something I teach called addition by subtraction is what are the things you're doing that aren't helping you get to where you want to go, which is where the vices and the addictive behaviors come in, because that's actually, if you're doing those things, then you're not doing the things you need to be doing, right? If you're drinking, you're not building your business, you're not doing your prospecting, you're not, if you're hungover, you're not going to be you're not going to have the right energy or probably the right motivation to go and do the hard things. So clearing all that enables you to be a rock star in sales and in business. I've seen that with a lot of the people that I coach. When they make those changes, their business skyrockets when they subtract the thing, right, that's holding them back. Their business explodes. And so we address that stuff first before we teach the skills, because you're not going to be able to apply the skills if you're working from a broken foundation or a shaky foundation.
I was just gonna say that, like, you can have all the strategy in the world you want, but if you're a broken individual or you're, at war with yourself, how can you actually grow and scale
Yeah,
if you want to?
you're just going to feel more shame, because the shit I teach is really hard. It is hard to get to executives and CEOs. It is hard to have a message that gets their attention. It is hard to be able to connect and have a powerful conversation where you're present and you talk about their needs if you're not good with yourself. When you're good with yourself, you can totally focus and serve other people and put your attention on the person in front of you, which is essentially what sales is. And that's what successful sales requires, is presence and focus on the other person versus yourself. But if you're insecure, you're going to show up with imposter syndrome. You're going to show up with self-doubt because you're carrying the shame. And the shame is the lowest grade emotion when it comes to selling and honestly interacting with people.
Yeah, vibrationally, you're such a low level. And I think one thing you mentioned too that really hit home and resonated for me was finding purpose. So finding purpose for me as a salesperson was, and you also mentioned integrity, was, working with integrity. I'd have my manager say, "Go say this to, I'm going to feed your lips. Go say this to your customer," and I'd be like, "I'm not saying that. That's not me. I'm not going to do that. If I lose a sale because of it, so be it. But I want to sleep well tonight." And what I found is that just over time, I started getting a lot of referrals and repeat business because people respected me. People saw that I was coming from a place of integrity. And that was important for me. Going back to my door-to-door days, I would knock on someone's door and they'd look out their door and look down the street both ways and they'd say, "Where's the van that dropped you off?" Right? Everybody had this imagination that we were all these like, runaway kids and that we were just up to no good. And it's like, no, I mean, you can have integrity in door-to-door space. You can have integrity as a top selling salesperson. I mean, oftentimes I think people think the top salespeople are doing something sideways. And it's like, no, if you just do right by people, you will get business over and over and over again.
100%. I mean, that's really, I had a person reach out to me today for coaching, and she wanted to know how to land an enterprise tech role. And she asked if my coaching program would help. And I said, that's really not what we do. We help people in seat with this. We're not career or job prep. We can do that, but that's not our core business. And that's kind of how we run it. If it's not a fit, we're not going to try to sell you anything or position our services. It's when you don't need the money, and if you can sell like you don't need the money, then you can really focus on the other person. I think that's a big takeaway for me in terms of sales, is detaching from the outcome of needing the sale. And that comes down to money. It's like, if you don't feel like you need the money because you're secure in who you are and you have your finances in order, then you can just go out and do it because you want to do it versus from a place of neediness.
Yeah. And I always said, just like dogs can sense fear, people sense that when you got that commission breath on you and you want to really close a deal really badly.
Totally.
But if you're in your flow state, to me, flow state is basically in between surrender and discipline. And I've heard you kind of say that in other ways here this morning. That flow state for me was like, hey, I am following my process. I'm controlling the controllables and I'm letting the results handle themselves.
And you're serving.
And you're serving.
You're serving. You wouldn't start a podcast or a show called Sobriety, Spirituality, and Sales unless you had a calling to be able to pay it forward and to help people in these areas. And I think you're spot on, Mike. And I have not seen, that's why I came on your podcast, is I've not seen somebody make that connection between sobriety and sales performance. But my business performance, our company exploded from the very beginning because I had done the personal work and the deep work on myself that enabled me to have the confidence to then focus on other people. And I think that's what the 12-step program, and that's what any addiction recovery program requires, is to continually do the work on yourself, to continue to take inventory, continue to pray, and to correct yourself when you're wrong. That's steps 10 through 12 and the 12 steps. And then 12, pay it forward. Having had a spiritual awakening, we've taken the message to other addicts. And I'm doing that, and you're doing it in the way that we can with media and with sharing stories. So I love what you're doing.
Absolutely. And I think, when you have this abundance mindset and you just want to help people and be of a service mindset, it's like the things just, they flow so easily. I've seen so many people just trying to hammer out a deal where it's just, they're holding their breath because they're trying so hard. And it's like, you're almost fighting life itself at that point. So, really
Totally.
what you've had to say today. We're kind of wrapping up. I want to be cognizant of your time here. For the man that's kind of leaning in today, that's saying, hey man, I might have a problem with pornography. I might have a problem with escaping reality. I don't have the best relationship with my wife, excuse me, and my life really. What advice would you have for that man today that's maybe listening and saying, gosh, I think that I might have an integrity gap?
I think step one for anybody is to get help. I think you're only as sick as your secrets,
I love
and the
that.
most free person in the world is the one with nothing to hide.
Mm,
And if you're feeling that way, it's because you have most likely some secrets, some shadow behaviors, as Carl Jung calls it, and we do in men's work, that are even the oldest addictions, like skeletons. They're my skeletons in the closet, keep them locked up. Like, those are secrets, and you carry them with you, whether they're in your subconscious or they're in your conscious. So step one for anybody is, don't try and do this alone. Don't try and carry this alone. My problem was, for the better part of 15, 20 years, I said, I can do this on my own. And I remember I would delete a porn app, and then I would reinstall it. Or I would say, after a strip club, I'm never doing that again. Last chance. If you're saying last time, like, that is probably a pretty clear indicator that you have a problem and that you have addictive tendencies. So for people who this might resonate with, for men especially, like, go get help. You can go to a lot of different websites. Every Man's Battle has a lot of resources. Sexandrelationshiphealing.com has a lot of resources. SAA.org. And start the journey, right? And help can come in many forms. It can come with therapy. Specifically, I would get a certified sex addiction therapist if you struggle with pornography or compulsive sexual behavior. That's the type of therapist you would want. They're called CSATs. Or you can go to a meeting, a 12-step recovery meeting. SAA.org, SAA Recovery has meetings every hour of every day, to know that you're not alone, to know that you're dealing with something that you've avoided dealing with for a long time is really, really powerful. And to go into a room where you can be honest and be received with love, support, and grace is a really powerful thing. So that would be my start, is to get help and to share. And there's a release when it's no longer a secret. And then that's kind of the first step to going down the path of recovery or sobriety or healing or whatever comes after that.
Ian, thank you so much for your time. I know you're a busy individual, so we certainly appreciate you spending an hour with us this morning. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I look forward to staying connected.
Thank you, Mike, for what you're doing. And tell Sam I said hi, and that congrats on his success too. And thank you very much for this work that you're doing. It was really great meeting you, and congrats on your success. Congrats on your sobriety. And I feel super connected with you and in our stories. There's a lot in common. So thanks for having me on today.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.